The sun hung heavy over Dustville, casting long shadows across the cracked earth. Dust swirled in the wind like ghost whispers, clinging to every surface, choking every breath. At the edge of the desolate street, where the silence was broken only by the creak of a swinging saloon sign, a lone figure stumbled into town. She wore no shoes. Her feet were blistered, raw from miles of burning dirt roads. A once white dress clung to her in tatters, its hem soaked in old blood and despair. Her eyes, wide and glassy, darted from door to door, window to window, seeking mercy, finding shutters drawn and curtains twitching. No one stepped forward, no one asked her name. Dustville had seen its share of the broken and the damned. The woman walked like someone who had nothing left to lose. Her limbs trembled, but there was something deliberate in her movement. The townsfolk whispered behind their doors, "She's trouble, another lost soul. She's not our problem." She moved past the saloon where laughter died the moment she passed, past the general store, where the old man inside dropped the curtain with a curse. Only one building remained ahead of her, a small, weather-worn chapel. Its steeple leaned left, its cross tilted like a drunken sentinel, but it stood, and its door was open. Before we uncover the secret behind the chapel doors, subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this one. The woman reached the chapel steps. She paused as if unsure whether to enter or collapse. Her hand, shaking and pale, gripped the doorframe. Inside, the dim light filtered through stained glass, casting a spectrum of color on worn pews and tired floors. She stepped in, the scent of oil, wood, and old prayers wrapped around her. The air was cooler here, still, almost sacred. At the far end stood a man in black, tall and silent, his back to her as he arranged candles near the pulpit. He turned slowly, and their eyes met. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. He said nothing, only studied her face with a calm that unnerved her. Finally, she dropped to her knees. "I have nothing to give," she whispered, her voice brittle. "But if it means shelter, I'll give my body." She began to lift the remnants of her dress with trembling hands. The man moved forward, swift, but not with judgment. He knelt beside her, removed his own coat, and draped it gently over her shoulders. His voice was low, steady, and certain. "You are safe now." And in that moment, for the first time in days, Lily May breathed. The coat was heavy on her shoulders, warm despite its wear. She clutched it close, not out of cold, but out of disbelief. No one had covered her in years, only stripped, only taken. Her breath came shallow, as if afraid to disturb the silence. The man who had draped it over her now sat on the first pew, his eyes still on her but softer now. He gestured gently to the bench opposite him. "Sit if you're able," he said. She hesitated, then moved like a deer, half believing the hunter had lowered his rifle. The wood creaked beneath her weight. She didn't speak. Neither did he. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was respectful. After a while he stood and returned with a tin cup of water. "You've come a long way," he said. "Name's Jeremiah." "Lily," she answered. "Lily May." He nodded. "This chapel's not much. Roof leaks, organs out of tune, but it stands." She sipped the water like it was holy. "Why didn't you throw me out?" "Because you knocked," he said simply. The simplicity of it nearly broke her. Outside, the wind howled. Somewhere down the street a dog barked, then whimpered. Inside, the light had shifted slightly. Colors from the stained glass now kissed her skin, like the chapel itself was welcoming her. "Are you the priest?" she asked. "I am." "You don't look like one." "I wasn't always." She dared a question. "And if I hadn't knocked, what would have happened?" "I'd have found you anyway." Her throat tightened. "You don't know what I've done." "I don't need to." "You came here on your own feet. That's enough." She blinked hard. "I didn't come for redemption, just a roof, a place to hide." Jeremiah stood, not towering but firm. "You'll find shelter here. No questions, no payments, and never again will you need to offer your body to be seen." Her hands trembled around the cup. "You sound sure." "I am." And then he said the words again, like a promise etched into stone. "You are safe now." She didn't understand how words could feel like armor, but they did. That night, Jeremiah gave her a corner in the back room. It was cold and small, but it was hers. A thin mattress, a blanket, and peace. He didn't watch her undress, didn't linger near the door. He simply returned to the pew and began to pray in low whispers. Lily lay there, staring at the ceiling beams. Her mind screamed warnings. No man gave something for nothing. But exhaustion drowned doubt, and sleep came harder and deeper than it had in years. And in the chapel's silence, for the first time in her wandering, Lily didn't feel hunted. Lily awoke before the sun, startled by silence. No shouting, no glass breaking, no boots stomping up wooden stairs. Just birdsong, faint and cautious, like even the sparrows weren't sure it was safe to sing yet. She sat up slowly, expecting a demand, a hand, a deal. None came. Instead, the scent of frying cornmeal wafted in. Her stomach growled. She hesitated, then stepped barefoot into the chapel. Jeremiah stood by a small stove tucked behind the pulpit, frying cakes in an old iron pan. He looked over his shoulder, nodded. "Morning." She blinked. "Is that for me?" He didn't answer, just slid one onto a cracked plate and handed it to her. No grace spoken, no sermon given, just food. She sat cross-legged on the floor and ate like a starved thing. Halfway through, she paused. "Why are you helping me?" Jeremiah stirred the batter. "Because you needed help. That simple?" He glanced at her, eyes steady. "Most things are, if you don't overthink 'em." After breakfast, she wandered the chapel. Her fingers trailed across wooden pews, their edges worn smooth by time. A faded Bible lay open on the altar. Dust clung to every surface, yet the space felt cared for, like someone believed in what it represented, even if no one else did. In the back room, she found a comb and a pitcher of clean water. As she scrubbed her arms, bruises surfaced, purple reminders of Cole Braddock's fists, his rage when she'd tried to leave, his threats whispered against her skin. She shut her eyes. "Oh, you can't hide forever, girl," he'd hissed, breath sour with whiskey. "You try to run and I'll carve my name in your bones." He had kept her in the saloon like an ornament, broken and repainted nightly. Men with gold teeth and gold coins came to claim pieces of her. But it was Braddock who owned the whole of her suffering. Her hands trembled. She splashed more water on her face. That night she helped Jeremiah wipe the pews. He never asked where she was from, never asked who she was hiding from. His silence wasn't ignorance, it was respect. When she knocked over a candle holder and gasped, he didn't flinch. "Nothing sacred breaks that easy," he said. Later, as they sat in the front row, she finally whispered, "You think people like me can really be forgiven?" He took a long moment before answering. "I don't believe in people like you or me, only in people who want to change. That's all God ever asked." She looked down at her hands, scarred, tired, but no longer shaking. "Then I want to." And for the first time, Jeremiah smiled. Whispers began the second Lily stepped beyond the chapel steps. They drifted through town like smoke, thin, biting, impossible to grasp, but easy to feel. She's still there, sleeping under the Lord's roof. That ain't what churches are for. She kept her head down as she carried firewood to the chapel. The path from the forest was short, but felt longer each day, especially with eyes tracking her from behind curtains and saloon doors. Her hands were healing. Her heart, not yet. Inside, the air stayed cooler, safe, still sacred. "Don't let their voices turn into yours," Jeremiah told her one morning as they polished the brass candlesticks. "Dustville's memory is short, but its judgment's long. Keep walking." She nodded, though it didn't stop the gnawing doubt. Did she really belong here? Was kindness just a pause before rejection? Jeremiah handed her a small hymn book. "Pick one, for Sunday." She blinked. "You want me to sing?" "I want you to be heard." But before she could choose, something shifted. The town's silence grew thicker, heavier. Sheriff Billings stopped tipping his hat. "Mrs." Langston no longer left pies on the chapel steps. Even the children stopped running past the gates. Jeremiah noticed too. His eyes narrowed at the horizon, hands resting a little longer near the drawer where he kept an old Bible, and something else beneath it. Late one afternoon, a rider kicked up dust on Main Street. Lily watched from the bell tower window, heart freezing. Two men dismounted. Tall, rough, wide-brimmed hats pulled low. They spoke with the sheriff, who gestured vaguely toward the chapel. One of the strangers spit in the dirt, then laughed. They didn't come in that day, but the message was clear. They would. That night, Lily didn't sleep. "They're looking for me," she said, sitting beside Jeremiah under the chapel's oil lamp glow. He didn't ask how she knew. He only asked, "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Braddock sends men first, always, to sniff the air, to corner the prey." Jeremiah leaned back, folding his arms. "You could run. Still time." Her fists clenched. "I'm tired of running." "Then we prepare." She turned to him. You mean fight? I mean defend. But this is a church. His voice dropped low, solemn. God has many doors, Lily. Sometimes he asks us to keep them closed to wolves. The room fell silent again, not with fear but with decision. In the shadows of the pews, Lily felt something shift inside her. No longer the ache of flight, but the weight of standing still, standing firm. She was no longer just hiding. The chapel's back room held more than scripture. Lily found Jeremiah there one evening, crouched over a worn wooden chest. He didn't flinch when she entered. He simply lifted the lid, revealing not vestments or rosaries, but an old revolver wrapped in oilcloth, resting beside a faded photograph of a woman and child. She stared. "You were a gunman," she said. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled the revolver free, checking its weight like a man revisiting an old sin. "They called me the White Reaper," he said quietly. "I earned it. Every shot." Lily sat down across from him. "What changed?" "I buried them," he replied. "The name, the gun, and the man who used them, right under that altar when I took the cloth. Promised God and myself I'd never raise a weapon again." She looked at his hands, steady, worn, capable. "Why are you holding it now?" "Because the past has a way of following you, and because I made another promise the day you walked in here." Lily's voice trembled. "To protect me," he met her gaze. "To protect anyone who walks through that door." That night, they began. Jeremiah showed her how to load a pistol, how to check the chamber, how to breathe before pulling the trigger. His voice remained calm, almost prayerful, as if each step was a rite. She hated the cold feel of the metal, hated what it reminded her of, but she didn't look away. "You're not teaching me to kill," she said. "No," he replied. "I'm teaching you to choose. Fear takes choice away. Skill brings it back." They practiced in the woods behind the chapel, hidden among oaks and dust. Her hands were unsure at first, but her eyes were steady. Each shot was a note in a song she never wanted to sing, but now had to learn. At night, she sat on the chapel floor staring at the altar. "You think God understands?" Jeremiah sat beside her, revolver beside his Bible. "I think God remembers Eden had a sword at its gate." The town grew quieter, more tense. The sheriff's eyes darted whenever they passed. The saloon emptied earlier. The wind felt sharper, like it carried warnings. But Lily no longer flinched at every sound. The bruises on her body had faded, but something else was forming beneath her skin, steel, not scars. When she lit candles for the evening service, her hands no longer shook, and when she cleaned the revolver before bed, she did so with the same care Jeremiah gave to his Bible, because one day soon, she'd need both. The storm broke at sunrise. Hooves thundered down Main Street, stirring a cloud of red dust that choked the air. Braddock's men came with rifles slung across their backs and smirks carved into their faces. 4 of them rode in, mean-eyed and cruel-hearted. They tied their horses outside the saloon like they owned it, because once they did. Inside the chapel, Lily lit candles with steady fingers. Her breath was calm, her eyes sharper than the flame. Jeremiah stood at the door, watching the town freeze. People scurried indoors. The sheriff leaned against his post and didn't move. They had come. That evening, the first man stepped into the church. He wore spurs that jingled like mockery and a long scar down his cheek. He didn't sit, just spat on the floor. "We're looking for someone," he said. Jeremiah didn't flinch. "So's everyone." The man grinned. "Heard you're harboring a saloon girl. Ought to know that ain't very priestly." Jeremiah met his stare. "This is the house of God, not a hunting lodge." The man chuckled. "Tell that to Cole when he gets here." He left without another word. The next day, Lily helped Jeremiah reinforce the chapel doors. They dragged pews into place, moved shelves, stacked hymnals like bricks. It wouldn't stop bullets, but it might slow them. The townsfolk didn't offer help. They only watched. "You don't owe me this," she said that night as they nailed boards across the back windows. "I don't do it for you," Jeremiah answered. "I do it because right is right." They waited. On the 3rd day, Braddock's men returned, with rifles in hand. Gunshots rang out, splintering the church sign, shattering glass. Lily and Jeremiah ducked low behind the altar. The air filled with smoke and chaos. The sheriff was nowhere to be seen. "They won't stop," Lily said, voice cold. "They'll burn it all." "Then we fight on holy ground," Jeremiah replied. From behind the altar they returned fire. Lily's aim was sharp, 2 shots, 1 man down. Jeremiah took the shoulder of another, forcing retreat. The chapel groaned with each blast. the cross above swaying with the impact of violence. But they held. When one man breached the side door, Lily met him face to face. He raised his rifle, too slow. She shot him in the leg, kicked the weapon from his grip, and dragged him out by the collar. "I'm not yours," she spat. "Never was." The others hesitated after that. Night fell with the scent of gunpowder thick in the air. The chapel was battered, its windows shattered, but still standing. Lily's hands were black with soot, her eyes alive with something new. "They'll be back," she said. Jeremiah nodded. "But now they know. This house won't fall easy." And neither would she. Dustville held its breath. The saloon stayed quiet, its piano untouched. The townsfolk barely stepped outside. Everyone knew what came next. The men Jeremiah and Lily had driven off were just the beginning. On the 7th morning, he arrived. Cole Braddock rode in alone, slow and deliberate, as if daring someone to stop him. His black hat cast a shadow over eyes that had seen too much and enjoyed every bit of it. A silver tooth gleamed when he grinned. He dismounted with the casual confidence of a man who believed the world owed him its daughters. He didn't knock. He pushed open the chapel doors like he owned them. The room still bore the scars of battle, broken pews, shattered windows, but it stood. So did Lily. She was lighting candles again, refusing to tremble. Braddock sauntered down the aisle, his boots echoing across the wooden floor. He tipped his hat. "Sweet thing," he drawled. "Didn't I tell you, you can run, but you always end up kneeling?" She didn't move. "You're not welcome here," Jeremiah said, stepping between them. Braddock turned, laughed. "Well, if it ain't the preacher with a spine. Thought you folks were pacifists." "We believe in mercy," Jeremiah replied. "Not surrender." Braddock looked around, taking in the damage. "Hell of a sermon y'all gave the other day. 2 of my boys still limping. More will if they come again." Braddock's grin faded. "You hiding a whore, Padre. That makes you a hypocrite or a fool. Which one?" Jeremiah stood silent. Braddock stepped closer to Lily. "I paid for you, girl. I fed you, clothed you. And this is how you repay me?" She met his eyes. "You chained me." He slapped her. The sound cracked through the chapel like a gunshot. Lily didn't cry out. She didn't flinch. Jeremiah did. He stepped forward, fists clenched. Braddock turned to him, spitting on the Bible at the altar. "Ain't no God in this room," he sneered. Jeremiah looked down at the stained page, then to Lily, then to the drawer behind the pulpit. Without a word, he walked to it. The silence was louder than any sermon. He opened the drawer, pulled out the revolver. Braddock laughed. "There he is. The White Reaper." Jeremiah checked the chamber. "I buried that man." Braddock tilted his head. "Then dig him up, preacher. Let's see if he still remembers how to shoot." The moment stretched thin. Lily stood frozen, breath caught in her throat. Jeremiah stepped forward, revolver heavy in his hand. "I won't shoot for vengeance," he said, "but I will for justice." Braddock's grin faltered, just slightly. The duel had not yet begun, but the war was now visible face to face. The street outside the chapel fell silent. Dust hung in the morning air like judgment, suspended and still. Braddock stepped backward through the church doors, never turning his back on Jeremiah. The preacher followed, revolver at his side, his eyes locked on the man who had spat on the altar and raised a hand to a woman seeking sanctuary. Lily stood in the doorway, hands clenched. The entire town watched now, peering from behind shutters, from porches and balconies. Even Sheriff Billings stood frozen near the saloon, doing nothing. Braddock paced 10 steps into the street. "So this is how it ends?" he called. "You and me? Pistol in hand, preacher?" Jeremiah's voice was steady. "It ends when you stop hurting people." Braddock smirked. "You think you're righteous? You think that badge of faith makes you clean?" "I don't shoot for pride," Jeremiah said. "I shoot for peace." They faced each other, still as tombstones. Then Braddock moved, fast, a flicker of black coat and silver tooth. His gun flashed, but Jeremiah was faster. One crack tore the silence. Braddock staggered, clutching his chest, eyes wide with disbelief. He fell. Dust rose around him like smoke from a funeral pyre. Jeremiah dropped to one knee, breath ragged. Lily ran to him, catching his weight before he collapsed fully. "You're hit," she cried, spotting the blood spreading through his shirt. "Shoulder," he said, grimacing. "Clean pass. I've had worse." She pressed against the wound. "Stay with me." He managed a faint smile. "Ain't planning on leaving." Around them, Braddock's men scattered. None dared raise a weapon. None dared take his place. One by one they rode out, spooked not by bullets, but by something deeper. The man who had buried his gun had picked it back up and chosen life over vengeance. The sheriff stepped forward at last. "You all right, preacher?" Jeremiah's eyes narrowed. "You waited long enough." The sheriff looked away. As Lily helped Jeremiah back into the chapel, the people of Dustville emerged slowly, like ghosts reclaiming the land. A few stepped inside the broken sanctuary. One old man helped right a pew. A woman brought a cloth for the blood. Lily watched them with quiet disbelief. "They see you now," Jeremiah whispered. "Not what you were, what you are." She didn't answer. She only tightened the bandage on his arm. Later, as twilight fell over the battered church, Lily stood alone in the doorway. Her hands were sore, her dress torn, but her eyes held light. This time she wasn't running. She was standing. Mourning in Dustville no longer sounded like silence. Children laughed outside the chapel, chasing each other through the dust as if the fear that once clung to the town had been swept out with the smoke. The air carried the scent of fresh bread and newly cut wood. A place once paralyzed by fear had begun, slowly, to move again. Inside the chapel, Lily opened the shutters, letting in the sun. She moved without hesitation, bare feet against smooth wood, no longer hiding in the shadows. The wounds on her arms had faded into lines, reminders, not curses. Jeremiah sat in a chair near the altar, arm in a sling, watching her with quiet pride. "You've rearranged the whole place," he said. "Didn't realize how crooked it was till I looked at it with clear eyes," she answered. The chapel had changed. Benches mended, glass panes replaced with colorful patches of cloth, light filtering in like stained hope. But more than the building, the spirit had shifted. People now came through the door, not out of habit, but out of need and trust. Mrs. Langston brought food every Sunday. The blacksmith helped rebuild the bell tower. Even the saloon owner dropped off coin for repairs, though he didn't speak a word when he did. And the sheriff? He resigned quietly, slipping a letter under the chapel door. No one saw him leave. In his place, the town formed a small council, Jeremiah among them. But when they asked who would keep order, eyes turned to Lily. She didn't wear a badge. She didn't need one. Instead, she gathered the town's orphan girls each afternoon in the chapel. She taught them scripture. Then she taught them how to shoot. "Because faith without strength is a seed without water," she told them. She never spoke Cole Braddock's name again. He no longer held weight in her mouth. One day a little girl asked her, "Were you scared?" Lily paused, brushing hair from the child's forehead. "Yes," she said, "but I stood anyway." Jeremiah preached again, though his voice was softer now, less about heaven and more about healing. And always beside him stood Lily, watching the pews fill, holding the hymn book with a steadiness she never thought she'd have. Dustville had changed, not all at once, but enough. Enough for Lily to smile as she swept the porch. Enough for neighbors to nod when they passed. Enough to believe in something beyond survival. At dusk, she sat with Jeremiah under the chapel's new roof, the stars just beginning to show. "You still think this place is crooked?" he asked. She looked around, breathed deep. "No," she said. "It's finally standing straight." The bell rang softly at dawn, not as a warning, but as a welcome. Lily stood at the front of the chapel, a white shawl draped over her shoulders, her hands folded, not in fear, but in peace. The girls she taught sat in the front pews, whispering and giggling among themselves, waiting for the sermon to begin. Jeremiah adjusted the pages of his worn Bible. His voice had returned in full, strong and steady, but this morning he looked to Lily. "Would you like to begin?" She hesitated, then nodded. Her steps to the altar were light, assured. She didn't read from the page. She didn't need to. "I used to believe that safety was something you found behind walls, that if you stayed quiet, small, hidden, maybe the hurt would pass you by, but I was wrong." She paused, eyes on the congregation, faces she once feared, now familiar. "Safety isn't silence. It's being seen. It's being heard and still held. It's someone who says you are safe now and means it." Her voice didn't waver. Jeremiah smiled as she stepped down. Outside, Dustville breathed easier than it had in years. The wind no longer carried threat. It carried songs, the hammering of new boards, the laughter of children. The chapel's bell no longer called for help. It called people home. Later that afternoon, Lily knelt by a small flower bed she'd planted near the porch. Her hands were in the dirt, coaxing new life from hard ground. Jeremiah walked up beside her. "You're not just keeping this place anymore," he said. She looked up, wiping her brow. "I know. You've become it." She didn't reply. but the truth of it warmed her chest. That evening, as the sun fell behind the hills, Lily lit the last candle in the chapel and stepped outside. A traveller passed by the gates, a young woman, alone, ragged. Lily watched her hesitate, unsure whether to approach. She walked to the edge of the steps, met her eyes, and smiled. "There's a place here for you," she said, "if you want it." The girl nodded, eyes brimming. And Lily opened the chapel door. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are more tales of courage, healing, and redemption waiting for you. And if you're ready for another powerful journey, click the video on your screen now. The next chapter begins there.